Hey Saints, back at it again a little bit here, I guess. The last couple of videos, I was summarizing a bunch of stuff. I think we found some cool stuff there in Daniel 12, and then I'd sort of promised to do an overview because the timelines I had used from 3 years ago, and many of them that we had used in the past, some of my videos didn't reflect some of the newer things I think the Lord was showing me in terms of the timing of Daniel's 70th week and what's going on with Revelation 6, and there was a whole bunch of things there that I think the Lord had been showing me. One of them, though, that I'm kind of drilling into again tonight, through a number of videos and a lot of Bible study, I was becoming very convinced that the War of Gog and Magog, that Ezekiel 38 and 39 war, is referenced there in Seal 4. And I just want to touch on it quick because, people join the channel over time and all of a sudden they see one video and they're like, where's he coming from? What's going on? So believe me, these were full Bible studies, but I'll try and summarize a little bit what I think the Lord showed me, and this isn't the the exhaustive version. This is the okay, he's not completely off the rails version. So we have here and when he had opened the fourth seal, I heard a voice of the fourth beast say, "Come and see." And I looked, and behold, a pale horse. His name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed him. And power was given unto them over a fourth part of the earth, to kill with a sword, with hunger, and with death, and with the beasts of the earth. And so how do we get Ezekiel 38 and 39 to sit there? Well, this, again, took a while to paste all this together, but in Joel 2, people, especially during the time of the blood moons, people love to quote these verses down at the bottom. And like in verse 30, well, first they said the outpouring of the Holy Spirit in those days. I'll show wonders in the heavens and on earth, blood and fire and pillars of smoke. The sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon to blood before the great and terrible day of the Lord comes. And so the timing and the positioning of this became curious because he mentions before the great and terrible day of the Lord comes. And the question is what's the scope of day of the Lord here in Joel? In particular, in this reference in Joel 2, because the day of the Lord, unfortunately, appears to have at least three scopes. It can mean the day, the 24-hour period of the second coming of the Lord, as feet touching down the Mount of Olives, or it appears like it could be the 7-year period, or the post-rapture period to the second coming, put it that way. And then there's some references, if you study this out, that appear to include even the millennial reign as the day of the Lord. So which one is it? And I did a study here, and I'm just going to finish with my conclusions. It looks like an army here is being assembled in Joel 1. There's lots of weird characteristics of it, and we'll take a look at a little bit of that in a minute. And then the army appears to be called the Northern Army, coming down on the children of Israel here in the middle, let's say the middle part. Let the priests and the ministers of the Lord weep between the porch and altar. So you see the context there, the Jewish context, and all that as they see this band coming down. Have pity on your people, Lord. That's the plea. And so this looks like it's before that reference to the day of the Lord, and it's to the Jewish people. And then you get this curious thing: I will remove far off from you the northern army And I'll drive him into a land barren and desolate, his face toward the east sea, and his hinder part toward the utmost sea. And the stink shall come up, and his ill savor shall come up, because he hath done great things. Well, when you go look, and I think it's especially in Ezekiel 39, you see it's called that War of Gog and Magog. The army is called the Northern Army again. He dies on the mountains of Israel, and a stink comes up so that people hold their nose when they pass by. The description's almost identical. And so you get linkages there between the Ezekiel 38 and 39 War of Gog and Magog, the Northern Army that dies on the hills of Israel, and the stink rises up. You get that both in Ezekiel 38, 39, here in Joel. And yet in Joel, you get the context of it's a locust. He likens it to a locust army in Joel 1. And then it appears to be here at the beginning of, Joel 2 and the tribulation period. And then when you get into Joel 3, there appears to be markers here of the end of the tribulation period, when these guys are done away with, and beat your plowshares into swords, and your pruning hooks into spears. Assemble and come, all you heathen, round about together. Cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Lord. Let the heathen wake up in the valley of Jehoshaphat. And so, this is the decision. The day of the Lord is near in the valley of decision. The moon shall be darkened, and the stars will withdraw their shining. And then the Lord roars out of Zion. Well, when is that? That's when he comes on the day of Armageddon, if you want to put it that way. So the scope in trying to interpret this is complicated, but you had so many alignments of Ezekiel 38 and 39 up here in the description of the Northern Army, and then yet when you get to Joel 3, you see that the day of the Lord coming. And so when I did that Bible study, I said, well, that first part of Joel 2 is the beginning of the tribulation period, and it lines up with Ezekiel 38 and 39. And in Joel 3, then it transitions and it shows the end of the tribulation period when God gets rid of these guys. And then, I noted there that that they're called the mighty ones or whatever. And I'd speculated before that, hey, are these Gabor? And that's where that all goes to is I think this locust army is Nephilim. And with the ties to Ezekiel 38 and 39, Nephilim, and who is Gog? Well, he's from the land of Magog, but you guys probably have done this before. If you do a little search, I think it's the city of London has a celebration to the giants called Gog. I think it is Gog and Magog there. And so there's lots of linkages to that Gog being a historic figure of a Nephilim. So wow, there's a bunch of stuff. Then the other curious things in terms of positioning, where this sits, this Gog-Magog war being in Revelation 6 at seal 4, came about because I was taking a look at Acts 2, down here in 17 to 20, where Peter's quoting that this outpouring of the Spirit thing, he's saying that's what's happening. At the day of Pentecost, he's saying that's what's happening, guys. And so then he quotes the Joel 2 verses, and it shall come to pass in the last days, saith God, that I'll pour out my Spirit upon all flesh. Your sons and daughters shall prophesy, your young men shall see visions, your old men shall dream dreams. And on my servants and on my handmaids I'll pour out in those days of my Spirit. They shall prophesy, and I will show wonders in heaven above, signs in the earth beneath, blood and fire and vapor of smoke. The sun shall turn to darkness and the moon to blood before the great and noble day of the Lord comes. And, so that one I started going, now that's weird. Again, when we were looking into the blood moon thing, that's weird because the day of Pentecost, way back in 32 AD, the sun didn't go dark and the moon to blood, and it definitely wasn't the day of the Lord yet. And so why is Peter quoting all that? And the conclusion that we came to doing a study on that is what it appears Peter was showing us, whether he knew it or not, was that outpouring of the Spirit to the Jewish people that were gathered on the day of Pentecost for their celebration in Jerusalem of the feast that they would have known as Shavuot. The outpouring of the Spirit came, but as soon as it did, because the Jews had crucified Christ on the cross, the church age was born. Jesus told them, stay in the city. After he appeared after his death and resurrection, Jesus came to his disciples and said, stay in the city until the Comforter comes or whatever. I'll send you the Comforter. He came on their Jewish feast celebration, Shavuot. That's why so many people were saved in that first day. 3,000 came because the city was packed with Jewish people there for the celebration. So the point being is that original Pentecost was the outpouring of the Spirit. Peter saying that's what that was. And yet, as soon as that happened, the church age was born. And that's the way people always talk about this dispensation change, especially from under the law to the church age, is like a pause button being hit. And the question is, when's it released? And this got into a whole bunch more Bible study, but it doesn't, the transition of the dispensation appears not to actually end at the rapture of the church, like everybody, including myself, up until about 4 or 5 months ago would have said. It appears again, right, after the sun goes dark and the moon to blood, the outpouring of the Spirit happens again to the Jewish people, right there in Revelation 7. And so yes, the church proper is pictured in heaven in Revelation 4 and 5. So what's going on in Revelation 6? And that's all the curious stuff now is Revelation 6, the church is gone in heaven, but you see global outbreak of war, second seal, you see death and famine and financial collapse, seal 3, and then you see this army and a fourth of the nations die or die in battle at that seal 4. And there's a curious reference in there in the Greek to therion, which could be these Nephilim critters. So let's just tie this up now. In Acts 2, Peter quoted, in the last days, the Spirit gets poured out, and I will show wonders in heaven, signs in the earth beneath, blood, fire, vapor, smoke, and the sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon to blood before that great and notable day. And here was the next little discovery. The great and notable day is right down here. Revelation 6:16. And it was said to the mountains and the rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb, for the great day of his wrath is come. Who shall stand? And I went, wow, okay. So, in Joel there, the verses there in Joel 1 and 2, which we'll read, talk about that it happens before the great day of the Lord. And, right there is where that whole idea is introduced. So then I started getting more and more comfortable here with that seal 4 being a Nephilim army, and that it's the Ezekiel 38 and 39 war. So I'm hoping you're tracking there. I made another reference to Amos 7:1 in the Septuagint because in that last Daniel video I did, I actually played a snippet of Chuck Missler, and he pointed out that in the Septuagint version of Amos 7:1 that the locust army is headed up by Gog, and you get that in the Septuagint. And so it's just one more confirmation that the army we're seeing introduced in Joel 1, which we'll take a look at, is being led by Gog. And the unfortunate thing is Dr. Missler then said, well, is this he sort of intimated, I forget how he did it, that maybe this is the demon locust coming up out of Revelation 9. But I'll set that aside for now. Let's go take a look at Joel 1. In verse 6, for a nation has come upon my land, strong and without number, whose teeth are the teeth of a lion, and he hath teeth cheek of a great lion. Read 7, and he laid my vine waste and barked my fig tree, and he made it clean bare and cast it away, and the branches thereof he made white. And the nation of Israel is referred to as the fig tree. And so he's coming upon Israel here, but it's a nation that's coming down on them. And then the curious thing here is, let's flip to the Strong's reference, and this nation that's coming up upon them is this word, I guess it's al, above, over, upon, and if it's used as against, it's always in relation to a downward aspect. So if you think about this, it's a nation coming down on top of them. Now, is that weird or what? When I caught that, I'm like, what? What? Okay. And then in Joel 1:15, let me turn off the Strongs here for a second. At last, for the day of the Lord is at hand, as destruction from the Almighty it shall come. And so I'm like, okay, that is strange, but the interesting thing is again, he's saying the day of the Lord is at hand, meaning it's about to come. And so you get confirmation after confirmation after confirmation that day of the Lord reference in the end of Revelation 6, the wrath of the Lamb, also says it's coming right then. That's when the day of the Lord starts. That's Daniel's 70th week starts there. And so this whole set of stuff between the rapture of the church, which you see the church in heaven in Revelation 4 and 5. So you've got all these 6 seals. What's going on in here? And what I'm going to argue, which I did in the prior videos, is you get the appearance of the Antichrist, who needs to show up after the church is gone, confirmed with 2 Thessalonians 2, 1 through 3. So that happens, check. You got the outbreak of war, seal 2, and like I say, death, famine, and more war defined there in seal 4. And so after the church goes, it's a good place to put that Ezekiel 38 and 39 war, because one of the curious little aspects of that war is that they burn the weapons from that war for 7 years. Well, if that war doesn't happen before the literal start of Daniel's 70th week, then you get this awkward situation where the Jews are burning these weapons from this war into the millennial reign of Christ, which makes no sense, because the Lord's going to come down and he's going to refresh the earth, and the Jews are going to have their land grant and sit under their own fig tree. They wouldn't be burning weapons from some 7-year gone by war. So we had to find the Ezekiel 38-39 war happening before the start of Daniel's 70th week. And this whole thing fits together really nice then. And the sun needs to go dark and the moon to blood before that great day. And let's just take a little confirmation on that. Revelation 6. 12, and I beheld, and he opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black, and the moon became as blood. And so there you go. This whole thing fits together really nice. You've got the appearance of this army that comes down upon the world, called by God, comes down upon the world, and is probably Nephilim. It's the mighty ones in there, right? It happens prior to the day of the Lord. God calls it his army, and yet it's the northern army that then comes in and invades Israel, which fits with Ezekiel 38, especially the description in 39. And then that all happens prior, right, till you see this Joel 2:27 to 32 reference. So I hope you're kind of following this, because this is a lot of Bible studies boiled down into, like a fire hose deal. Joel 2:27, and you shall know that I am in the midst of Israel, that I am the Lord your God, and none else, and my people shall never be ashamed. And it shall come to pass afterwards that I'll pour out my spirit on all flesh, and your sons and daughters will prophesy, your old men shall dream dreams, your young men shall see visions, right? This is right out of what Peter read in Acts 2. And also upon the servants and handmaidens in those days I'll pour out my spirit, and I will show wonders in the heavens and in the earth, blood, fire, pillars of smoke. The sun shall be turned into darkness, and the moon into blood, before the great and terrible day of the Lord comes. And so notice how that description is sitting after this northern army coming down on Israel. So you see how nice this all fits together. And that's what I love about doing Bible study. The Lord, all praise the Lord, right? The Bible is so consistent and so perfect that when you get an interpretation right, you basically know it's right, because all of a sudden pop, all sorts of other verses, fit into place perfectly. And so all of a sudden now we see this army being assembled, coming down upon the world, being called by God. And the first thing they do is they participate in a war against Israel, it appears. They're being called the Northern Army, and when they get put down, the stink rises up, which is exactly the same as what you see there in Ezekiel 39. And it all happens before the great day has come, which means it happens before the end of that sixth seal, and that all fits in there really nice. So now why am I doing this video, since that's a recap of a whole bunch of videos and a bunch of Bible study? I saw I guess it was one of those half-hour jobs. Tom Horn's coming out with a new book with Chris Putnam. And sometimes those guys just dig up some crazy good stuff. You got to admit that if you read any of those recent books. But they're coming out with a new book, and so they're hyping the book by doing the interview on Skywatch TV. And so I'm watching that, seeing if I'm going to maybe buy the book. And those guys are right back into, they're bringing up the Nephilim, and they're bringing up the fiery snakes from Isaiah 13. And just in my own head, I go, yes, that's right. I almost forgot about the fiery snakes. I think I mentioned them a couple of videos ago, but it's just one more confirmation. They're flying fiery snakes. And it got my head spinning. It's like, I got to go back and look. And just like I used the Nets version of the Septuagint to get those insights on Daniel 12, because it's coming off of base texts which are older, maybe not necessarily more trustworthy, but prior to the to the Masoretic text. I just, I found it to be a really curious source of good translation. And so let's go back there again. Here we are in Isaiah 13. Now I'm just going to show you 3 little blocks in here of passages between 13 and 14 because it's going to confirm again, at least in my simple little mind, this notion of the Nephilim are what's pictured in that army that's assembled in Ezekiel 38 and 39. And it's got to be assembled before the day of the Lord starts down there in the last verse of Revelation 6. So let's get into this now. And I'm going to all right, sorry about that. I lost my toolbar for the recording. A vision which Isaiah son of Amos saw against Babylon. So it's against Babylon. On a mountain in the plain, raise up a signal, raise up your voice to them, do not fear. Encourage them with your hand. Open, you rulers. It is I who instruct and I lead them. They have been consecrated, and it is I who summon them. Mighty ones come to fulfill my wrath. Bingo. God's calling mighty ones. And, see it's all footnoted here. This translation really does a nice job where he consistently translates Gibor, Gibborim, and all that into giants. He'll say it, it's not masked, which I really like. Come to fulfill my wrath. Well, isn't that perfect? That's exactly, they show up, and then, several verses later in Revelation 6, the wrath of the Lamb has come, right? It's perfect. A voice of many nations on the mountains, like that of many nations. A voice of kings and nations gathered together. Well, we know we have the 10 kings at the end of the 10 toes there that we see in Daniel 2, but the 10 nations or 10 districts, whatever the world's going to be carved up into at the end of the age. The Lord Sabaoth has commanded a heavily armed nation to come from a distant land, from the utmost foundation of heaven. Bam! What do we read there in Joel 1, verse 6? They're coming upon the land from above down to the ground. The Lord and his armed men to destroy the whole world. And, I've struggled at times with the scope of Isaiah 13, whether it was just the day, the second coming day of the Lord, or whether it was referencing the time frame, of the entire tribulation period. And if he's bringing them to destroy the whole world, we know that you got to get through all the judgments before the world is, in that condition. So I think the scope, at least here in this text, of this army coming down from above is a scope of the entire tribulation period. And that does fit with what we looked at there in Joel 2, being the Ezekiel 38-39 army before the day of the Lord. And then when we popped over to Joel 3, we saw the army gets put down at the second coming of Christ. And that's the end of the tribulation period. So I think we got this thing pretty well bolted down. I'm feeling a little bit more bold all the time. But that's the way the interpretations work. If you get it right, more and more scripture fits in, it snaps into place. And so that's what I'm kind of getting. Now, let's check this out. So, wail, for the day of the Lord is near, and destruction will come from God. Well, isn't that just what we were identifying as one of the criteria of this Nephilim army is they would have to show up, come down upon the world before the start of that day of the Lord, that Daniel 70th week. Bam, see how this thing is just, it makes sense then when you start putting this together. Now let me show you there's two more blocks of text and then we'll wrap up tonight. Um, yeah. For whoever is caught will be defeated, and whoever are gathered together will fall by the dagger, and they will strike down their children in front of them, and they will plunder their houses and take their wives. See, I am stirring up the Medes against you, who do not take silver into account, nor any need for gold. They will crush the arrows of the young men. They will have no mercy on your children, nor will their eyes be sparing upon the children. And then, so, that sounds like the ruthless, demon infested Nephilim. And when they're called the Medes, and this goes back a couple years ago, I did a study on that. There's problem is that's Western Iran, and there was an indigenous set of people there, but then all of a sudden it appears like there were these, kings or whatever that showed up, or a different group of people, put it that way, into that region. And with a lot of digging, you're going to see that they were also referenced as Aryans. And it certainly appears that this is the Aryan race that Hitler was trying to recreate. And they probably were blondish people that came in there. And so, again, you got distinct pointers back to the Nephilim of old. And given how pagan Hitler was, he was trying to rebreed back the Nephilim giants, right? If you go into all his occultic stuff, and where does the swastika come from? I think it comes out of India, pagan worship in India, and the Medes, when you track that back, they just appear on the scene there in Western Iran, but a lot of speculation that came out of India, where you see a lot of artifacts for the Nephilim. So you can go dig on that if you want. You'll see what I'm saying. And Babylon, which is called glorious by the king of the Chaldeans. Now that puts you back in Mesopotamia. So this whole thing about, New York or the U.S. being Babylon, I don't think is going to be biblical. When it's overthrown by Sodom and Gomorrah, it will not be inhabited forever, nor will they enter in for many generations, nor will Arabs pass through it. We'll see that you're really in the Middle East. I mean, with all those references, they're not talking about Arabs passing through New York City, right? So we just got to deal with the fact. Now, the interesting thing is, where do these Nephilim mighty men come from? They come down upon the earth. Now, doesn't that fit this whole Anunnaki, we've been seeded on the earth by aliens or whatever? Well, that certainly sounds like what's going to happen. So let's just picture the scenario. The church gets raptured out of here, and probably on the heels pretty quick, you get the appearance of, the Antichrist, which the Old Testament calls him the Assyrian. It might even in some sense be Nimrod that gets, brought back here. This text actually calls these guys the Assyrian as well. I'm not sure if we're going to read that or not, but there's lots of pointers to that's who this is. And so they come down upon the earth. How? Probably this is the UFO thing that people keep talking about. In the Bible, people say it's the wheel within the wheel and stuff, but it certainly appears like they come down as like the UFO, and now that could also very probably explain their story is going to be, those stupid Christians. We had to take them out of here, the whole Project Bluebeam, whatever, so that the race could advance to the next level. So you could be as gods, that's the lie from Satan, from the pit of hell, from the, original Adam and Eve time frame. That we know that story's coming. The New Age people are looking for it. The Luciferians are looking for it. The Satanists are looking. They all have that story. So guess where it's coming from, right? And so we see these guys coming down from above. God's calling them. and he's going to use that as part of the judgment on earth, these old ancient kings, these Nephilim. Okay, and then take up this lament against the king of Babylon, and you'll say that day how the exactor has ceased and the taskmaster has ceased. So see, he's the king of Babylon. Well, who was that? That was Nimrod, right? Um, and then the whole earth shouts for joy, you know, and then we get down here. Now he gets thrown, you know, cast down, and then Hades beneath was embittered upon meeting you, and all the mighty ones who have ruled earth rose up together against you. So, you know, he gets thrown into the pit, and who's down there now? The giants are down there. So you see how great this is. The whole thing comes together, and then this is the part everybody likes to quote: is how is fallen from heaven the day star. That's Lucifer in the untranslated Latin word coming from the Vulgate, which is used to rise early in the morning. He has been crushed into the earth. Who will send light to all the nations, right? And that's the Luciferians are looking for the light and the knowledge giver from heaven. Isn't it just interesting? You said in your mind, I will ascend to heaven, and I will set my throne above the stars. I will sit on a lofty mountain, the mountains toward the north. But he's going to descend where? Into Hades, and that's right where those Nephilim guys will meet him. So that all fits the whole end times biblical scenario, right? The Lord comes, he crushes the armies at the end of the age, and then what do we read in the I think it's in Revelation, the Antichrist and the false prophet get thrown into the pit. That's exactly what we're seeing right here, descend into Hades. And they who will see you marvel at you, say, is this the man that troubled the earth, shaking kings, the one that made the whole world desolate? I think I'll leave you there. There's so many little things I'd love to pick out of here. Let me see. Oh, the fiery snakes. I promised the fiery snakes. So he killed the Israelite people. Moving into 14, it's what happens then to the Jewish people in the final judgments here. They do this Nephilim army does come in and kill a bunch of the Israelis, right? But you'll not remain forever, you evil seed. And there, boom, that reminds you of the proto-evangelium out of, you know, Genesis 3, the seed of the serpent. And prepare your children to be slaughtered, see? And what were the Nephilim? They were the fallen angels mating with the human women. And the interesting case of some pagan lore that Satan himself caused Nimrod, and he might have been the progenitor of at least some of the Nephilim populations that ended up after the flood, so that they will not rise and inherit the earth and fill the earth with wars, which that's probably what they were doing after they arrived. And I'll rise up against them, says the Lord of Sabaoth, and destroy them in the name of the remnant of the offspring. And that is what happens in the second coming. That's your Armageddon event. And this is what the Lord says: I will make Babylonia desolate. Again, not New York City. So that the hedgehogs dwell there will become nothing, and I will make it a miry pit for destruction. This is what the Lord of Sabaoth says. And as I have planned, it shall remain, to destroy the Assyrians from my land, Syrians from the land and from my mountaintops, and they shall be trampled, and their yoke shall be removed from them, their shoulders. This is the plan the Lord has planned against the whole earth. So there you know it's the end times destruction and not some vague reference to the old Babylonian Empire, right? Let's see, here we go. Here's the snake part. He gets a second vision. It's tied to this. In the year of King Ahaz died, this word came to him: may you not rejoice, all you Allophiles, for the yoke of him who struck you is broken. Now, the Allophiles is a foreign nation, but it sure appears he's talking about the Israelis. But we know from Amos 5 and Micah 4 or 5 that a bunch of the Jewish people are taken back to Babylon in captivity in the last, in the Great Tribulation period. And so they're probably a foreign people being referred to in Babylon here. For from the seed of snakes will come forth the offspring of snakes, and from their offspring will come forth as flying snakes. Well, I think that's the last reference I'll give you guys, because, I think we just got it. It's the seed of the serpent is the Nephilim. They're going to come from up above down upon earth. God's the one that called them. This is not going to be, some Anunnaki thing trying to take the Christians out so the world can advance. This is all biblical, what's going to happen. You know what the false story is going to be, because we already see people in the New Age movement and the Luciferians teeing up the false argument, and yet the Bible is telling us right here what's going to happen. This is all about the return of Lucifer, the day star, the son of the morning, and his evil seed, the Nephilim hordes that are coming, and the judgment of this evil army and the death and the slaughter is going to happen technically before the Daniel 70th week starts, at the Ezekiel 38-39 war, most likely right there in seal 4, the Nephilim army being referred to as Therion in the Greek. There it fits very well. And that's before the day of the Lord starts. It's before, it's after the church leaves, and it's before that last set of verses there in Revelation 6, which is what I believe is technically the start of the 7-year period of Jacob's trouble, Daniel's 70th week. And as we learned in our Daniel 12 study, what ends the 70th week? We get that hint right there in Daniel 12. It's 1,290 days out from the abomination of desolation. And we know this by looking at Daniel 9:24, because the criteria for the Daniel 70th week is the redemption of the Jewish people. It says that 9:24, go read it. And then the anointing of the most holy, meaning Christ has to be back at the temple in Jerusalem for the 70th week to end. That being 1,290 days, if you work backwards at something clever, the abomination of desolation doesn't happen exactly at the midpoint of the Daniel 70th week. It happens 1 month before. So I think that's an interesting observation. But if you want to go pick through that or send me a post below, I can demonstrate that. But it's just all cool stuff that's kind of coming together here now that I think we've got the story painted correctly. So God bless you, saints. We're gone soon, and you see the big deception here that's going to happen. God bless you.